Hello and welcome to Chess Lovers channel. Today I'm going to talk about my 22nd choice of best middle game books, classical middle game books. So this is a series of 21 to 30. So earlier I have already discussed my 21st choices of recommendable middle game books, and the author to this book is Irving Chernev. So he has written the most instructive games of chess ever played, 62 masterpieces of chess strategy. So despite the fact this is a game collection, I nevertheless call it a middle game book. I will soon explain why, but first you should have some basic facts about this great writer Irving Chernev. So he was born 29th of January 1900 in Ukraine, and 1905 he moved to the United States, and he died there in 1981, 29th of September. So it's easy to remember his dates. His playing strength was around national master strength. So I assume he had something like 2100 to 2200 ELO. And that is a fully acceptable chess strength. But I would say that he's really a great writer, one of the world's best writers, because during the times he wrote chess books, that was not that profession was not so common as it is nowadays. And today it's in a way easier to write books. It's easier to find sources, and it's easier to write because the technical tools are easier to handle than during his time. I would certainly call this book of his as a classic. He has written many other good books, Logical Chess, Move by Move, and he was actually the writer who first, what I'm aware of, introduced this phrase move by move, which to my mind is very important due to pedagogical reasons. It essentially means that you are commenting on each move in the game, and this was a concept that was also used by, for example, Everyman Chess. They have a lot of books including this phrase move by move. So to my mind, that is a very important pedagogical concept when you are learning chess, that you must understand all the moves in the chess game. Especially if you want to learn a game by heart, you must really understand very precisely what is going on. And you must be able to put words on it, not only necessary variations. He has also written a book which I also can recommend, which I have read myself, Capablanca's Best Chess Endings. He really liked endings, and we will also see a lot of examples of that in this book. So I will explain this book in more detail. He wrote altogether 20 chess books. I think I own a dozen of his books, and I can recommend all of them. He has also written books about practical chess endings, about combinations and so on and so forth. So you can really feel that he loves chess when you're reading his books. This book I have read completely. I have played through all games, and some games I have played through twice, and some games I have also learned by heart. And what I'm going to do is to tell you the main structure in this book. And what I really like is that he has a very fitting title to each game. For example, the first very famous game, Capablanca, Tartakower, New York 1924, he titles Rook on the 7th rank. And obviously he's hinting to the famous Endgame, which arises in this game. So why do I call this a middle game book? Because all games are complete, and the best way to learn chess is always, I'm convinced of this, to study the whole game. Because then you learn the opening, you learn the transition, opening to middle game, you learn the middle game, and you learn the transition from middle game to end game. And then you learn the end game itself. Especially famous games, he has written instructive games. So obviously, if you're a club player, let's say, I would say that this book is very suitable up to 2200 from beginner's level. And even elite players can profit from this book, as the games are instructive and you should know these ideas presented in this book by heart. So what you can learn in this Endgame, Capablanca, Tartakower, New York 1924, is that if you have a rook on the 7th rank combined with an active king and also a passed pawn, it can compensate for, as in this game, 2 pawns. So you are learning to sacrifice for activity, and this is the most convincing game, Endgame. I've already written about this in my book, 300 Most Important Positions, because this is a very important idea, to sacrifice material for activity, but also to understand the value of the 7th rank, especially when the opponent's king is stuck on the last rank. It's an extremely important concept, which you can also find out about in many studies. So chess is very much a matter of understanding the value of each rank. This is something which is quite overlooked in chess literature. The strongest focus is on the 7th and 8th rank. The second game, Lissitzin, Leningrad, 1958, then the headline is "The King is a strong piece," and normally the king is strong in the end game, but the king can also be strong in the middle game and even in the opening, as Steines has shown. But mainly it is an endgame theme. But as I said before, if you play through the whole game from the beginning, you will understand all 3 phases of the game and also the 2 transition phases, which is often overlooked in books. If you only study an endgame position or a middle game position, you miss the transition. How did this position arise? We must always have the full picture to understand the position fully. A game that made a very strong impression on me, I even put an exclamation mark on it. The headline is "Knight Outpost at Queen 5." So he means D5, because this book is written in descriptive notation. I don't know if this edition is available in algebraic, but since this is such a good book, I hope you will learn descriptive notation. It will only take you 10 minutes. And you can enjoy a lot of books, especially from this company, Dover. One of the best chess companies to my mind, because there are so many classical books published by that company. And the game with a strong knight outpost at d5 is between Boleslavsky, Lissitzin, Moscow, 1958. And it made a very strong impression on me because Boleslavsky could actually have won an exchange by tactical means, but instead he made a positional pawn sacrifice only to get this, like Tarrasch prefers to call it, eternal knight. It is perhaps also an expression from Chernyshevsky. Anyway, so by getting this knight outpost at d5, it is actually so strong that a knight placed on that square might be worth at least 4 points, or maybe even 4.5 instead of 3. And it's also interesting that Chernev in his introduction writes about Tartakower's epigram, seize the outpost king 5, e5, with your knight, and you can go to sleep. I really like that expression. Maybe it was a hint to this game. The fourth game has the headline aggressive rook in the ending. So he's coming back to this theme he discussed in the first game. And then number 5, the pass pawn. So I will tell you now the titles of each game, because the pass pawn is normally an endgame theme, but it can also be a middle game theme. 6, weak pawns, weak squares, and mighty knights. So this is clearly a middle game theme, because here dealing with important classical elements. Weak pawns, weak squares. And mighty knights, I assume he's meaning outposts, which is also an important classical element. 7, finesse in the ending. 8, phalanx of pawns. So here is obviously talking about either pawn formations or pawn structures. I guess pawn formations. 9, pass pawns lust to expand. I also like very much in this book that there are many hints to Nimzowitsch. So obviously he had read him. So by reading this book, you also learn some Nimzowitsch. Obviously, I recommend you to read my system, because you will only get fragments from that book, in this book. Number 10, rook and pawn ending. So you can see how rook endings are very important. He's dealing with it in several games. King in the center. 12, the shifting attack. 13, every move. 14, a touch of jiu-jitsu. 15, the kingside attack. Yeah, this is clearly a middle game theme. 16, magnificent outpost. So here he comes back to the outpost again. I think the order of games here are not structured in any special way, but that is okay, because he just wants to show 62 masterpieces of chess strategy and one game is like a closed universe itself. So we go on to the next page. You can see here how a lot I have highlighted. And when I put an exclamation mark on the game, it means the game made a strong impression on me. And sometimes that I urge myself to learn it by heart. 17, the art of exchanging pieces. 18, the isolated pawn. And for me, this is a very important game because it's a game between Lasker, Tarrasch, St. Petersburg, 1914. And this game I have really tried to learn by heart because it shows how white plays against an isolated pawn on d4. And it's well protected by a knight on c6 and a bishop on b6 and a queen on d8. But he puts his queen on d3, his kingside rook on d1. He also has a knight on f3. So he puts pressure on it. And he cannot win the pawn on d4. But then he's focusing on the defending pieces, like the knight on c6 and the knight on and the bishop on b6. So that is how he's winning the game, by concentrating on the pieces that are defending the isolated pawns. So in some way, he has widened the concept of an isolated pawn weakness to the concept that the pieces that are defending isolated pawn are what you should aim at. So this is a very instructive game. If you learn the technique in that game, you can use it in many other games. So Lasker tried to win the isolated pawn, and if he couldn't win the pawn, he attacked the defending pieces. But a player like Nimzowitsch, he preferred to blockade the pawn. So this is very interesting, how to deal with the isolated pawn. And then we also have games by Karpo where he simply wins the isolated pawn. So there are three methods how to concentrate your forces when we are dealing with isolated pawn position. And he has several other, at least another game with isolated pawns. So we will come back to this theme. 19, the seesaw check, Zugzwang, and other tactical tricks. So this seems to be a game with a lot of tactics, but also Zugzwang. So that is interesting. The two bishops, a very important element in the tradition of Steinitz to understand deeply. Variety of themes. 22, systematic strangulation. And this is a game between Tarrasch, who was a very skillful strangulator, Schlechter, Vienna, 1898. Good bishop and bad bishop, also important elements in chess. Coup de grace. It's a French expression for the decisive struck or the decisive blow. And 25, the powerful passed pawns, bishop and a half. 27, prophetic strategy, and of course he has a game with Tarrasch, who usually played like that. So Tarrasch is also a player here who is involved in several games, because he is a very good player to study if you want to learn classical chess in the tradition of Steinitz. 28. Problem like final. 29. A pawn is a pawn is a pawn. 30. Bored with excitement. He has very good titles because he hints to being bored, but he also hints to the chessboard. Of course, here he means that the chessboard is full with excitement. Elegant simplification. 4 endings in one. And next page, 33. Bishop and pawn ending deluxe. Brilliant career of a pawn. 35. Dispatching the king's musketeers. 36. The sheltering pawn. 37. The power of position play. 38. That old black magic. 39. And this is a game I have put an exclamation mark on. The Singular Strategy of Steinitz. It's a game between Steiner Selman, Baltimore, 1885. So it's a very important game to my mind to learn by heart. It is also highlighting black square strategy. 40. The Odyssey of an isolated pawn. So here he discusses another isolated pawn game. Barmen, Boleslavsky, Oster, 1906. So this is also a very important game to study, to learn the intricacies connected to the isolated pawn. 41. Zugzwang, the invisible weapon. 42. Symphony of Combinations. I also put an exclamation mark to this game. Eliskases Greenfeld, Marius Ostrau, 1933. 43. Escorting the potential queen. 44. The Pillsbury Bind. 45. The Galloping Knight. This is also a game played by Tarrasch. 47. The Roving Rook. Yeah, that's a very good title. He was really good with words. How to create sentences and phrases. Great writer. It's a pleasure to read his language. Web of Black Squares. And this is, to my mind, game 47. The most important game in the whole book. Web of Black Squares. Schlechter John, Barmen, 1905. You can see here how I have highlighted that game with 2 exclamation marks. So this is a game you should learn by heart, because if you learn this game by heart, you also learn a very important black square strategy which you can use in all your games where you're concentrating on black squares. So that is number 1 game to deeply study and understand. 48. Endgame arithmetic. 49. In the grand manner. And on the next page, number 50. March of the little pawns. 51. Irresistible pawn roller. 52. Quiet like a tiger. 53. cornucopia of ideas. And that was a new expression for me, but it means an abundance of something, and in this case ideas. So that's the first time I read such a word in chess literature. See, he was certainly good with languages, Irving Chernev. Endgame duel, knight against rook. Perennial favorite, command of the board. The king takes a walk. That is a game Botvinnik Khan Sverdlovsk, 1943 and 58. Surprise, surprise. 59. Bolt from the blue, 60. Lured into Zugzwang, 61. The flash of a mighty surprise, 62. Symphony of heavenly length. I also put an exclamation mark on that game. Yeah, and there are even, I mean, you can even see photos in this game. And something I have highlighted here. So, yeah, and here you have a photo of Michael Todd. Petrosian. It's really nice book. It's always a pleasure when there are photos in the book. Smyslow. Ali Khan. Kieres. Yeah, and there are more pictures in this book. So this is my number one recommendation when we are talking about this great writer Irving Chernev. And don't be afraid of the descriptive notation, embrace it, because there are so many good games written with this notation. And if you don't have this book by Irving Chernev, there are other books such as Logical Chess Move by Move, which I can also recommend, and his books are especially suitable for experienced club players, I would say, who would like to consolidate their fundamental chess understanding with an emphasis on the middle game. So play through all games in this book and choose the most important games, maybe 5 games, maybe 10 games, to learn by heart. My first recommendation is the game Schlechter John, Barmen, 1905, which deals with black square strategy. So this was my 22nd choice. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you when I tell you what I believe is a recommended 23rd best choice of classical middle game books. See you then.